Hi guys, I want to use this video to talk about graphing quadratic equations. Remember, a quadratic equation has the form y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. And there's a restriction that quadratic equations are of this form when a doesn't equal 0. That just means that the coefficient of the x squared term can't be 0. You have to have x squared of some value. To graph a quadratic equation, the simplest way is to first find the equation for the axis of symmetry, which is that x equals negative b over 2a. Use this value of x to find the vertex of the parabola. And then once you know the axis of symmetry and the vertex, to pick one other point and graph it. Let me show you what that means. To graph the equation y equals 3x squared plus 6x minus 4, I'm going to start by finding the axis of symmetry at x equals negative b over 2a. Well, since b is the coefficient of x, then in this case b is 6. So negative b is negative 6 over 2 times a. A is the coefficient of x squared, so 2 times 3. So we end up with negative 6 over 6, which is equal to negative 1. Well, I know now that on the graph at x equals negative 1, which is right here, is where the vertical axis of symmetry is for the parabola. I'm going to use this value of x, plug it back into the formula, so I get y equals 3 times negative 1 squared plus 6 times negative 1 minus 4, just putting in negative 1 for x here and here. In order to calculate the coordinates of the vertex, I know the x value, now I'm finding the y value. This gives me y equals negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, times 3 is 3, plus 6 times negative 1 is negative 6, minus 4. 3 plus negative 6 is negative 3, minus 4 is going to be negative 7. So the vertex is at x equals negative 1, y equals negative 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, down here. That's the first point in the parabola that I know. After we've found the vertex at negative 1, negative 7, and the axis of symmetry at x equals negative 1, I just need to find one other point. So I'm going to pick x equals 0. And I could pick any other x value, as long as I don't pick negative 1, to help me graph the parabola. And actually, instead of x equals 0, I might try to go a little bit further away from the axis of symmetry. So I might go 2 steps away and go to x equals positive 1. Well, if x equals positive 1 and y equals 3 times x squared plus 6x minus 4, then y equals 5. And if x equals 1 and y equals 5, then we get the point 1, 5 on our parabola. That's 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And since the parabola is symmetrical about this line, if I took 2 steps this way to get to this point, then I could take 2 steps this way to get to a point on the other side of the axis of symmetry. And now to make the parabola, I'm just going to try to make a smooth curve that connects all 3 points. And that's how I would graph a parabola, using the axis of symmetry, the vertex, and one extra point. Let's do another example. To graph the equation, start with the axis of symmetry at x equals negative b over 2a. In this case, negative b is, well, b is the coefficient of x, and since it's negative, we get negative 8. So negative b is negative negative 8. We'll think of that as positive 8 over 2a. A is the coefficient of x squared, and that's negative 2. So we get negative negative 8, positive 8, over 2 times negative 2, negative 4, and that gives us x equals negative 2. So, again, we know that at negative 2 on the x-axis is the vertical axis of symmetry. You don't need to draw this line, but it's helpful to visualize it, so I'm drawing it to help. To find the vertex now, we're going to use the x value of negative 2 from the axis of symmetry and stick it back into the equation. So y equals negative 2 times negative 2 squared minus 8 times negative 2 plus 2. Well, negative 2 squared is positive 4 times negative 2, negative 8. Negative 8 times negative 2 is going to be positive 16 plus 2. And so, let's see, negative 8 plus 16 is 8, plus 2 is 10. So the vertex is at negative 2, positive 10. So if I go over negative 2, I need to go up to positive 10. 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so up here, all the way at negative 2, 10 is the vertex. I'm going to take 2 steps away from the vertex to find another point. So let's say x equals 0. That would be 2 steps away from x equals negative 2. And if x equals 0, y is negative 2x squared minus 8x plus 2, which is just positive 2. So if x equals 2, y equals 0, and we get the point 0, 2, which is right here. Let's zoom back up a little bit. So remember, the graph is symmetrical here. That means if you take 2 steps away from the axis to get to this point, then you must take 2 steps away from the axis on this side to get to another point at negative 2. From there, we can graph the parabola by just making a smooth curve all the way up to our vertex.